Hey guys, I'm here with the Boss DD-8 digital delay, and I really like this. I'm really surprised by it. In the opening, you heard it in wide stereo mode. It's just awesome. It's almost like a ping pong, but not exactly. It's not devised out like a ping pong delay. It's a really good alternative to a reverb to add space to a synth, and that's why I'm going to go over some things today. As you heard in the opening, that was one of the new patches I made for the opsix. I'm going to probably do some tutorials about the opsix in the future. It's a little difficult of a synth to program, but it's FM. It's probably the simplest FM synth I've ever used, but yeah, it's a neat Kodo patch, and I'll be using that as along with a few other patches for this demo. So, like I said, you heard this in wide stereo. And I'll go through the modes really quick, but the rest of the demos will just go in wide stereo. But I'm going to demo the other modes. So it's a little painful to get into different modes on this, but it's not like the end of the world. It's not like trying to set the alternate modes on a Maris pedal, which is really difficult. But, what you're going to need is you're going to need it plugged into port A, something plugged into port A so it's enabled. And you're going to need another plug to plug into port B in order to get into settings mode. And in order to do that, you have to hold down the foot switch, and then you have to go ahead and plug in a cable. As you can see, it now has an orange LED turned on. So the settings are as follows. If you have it in loop mode or set the program selector to loop, you'll just have a panning delay, which we're going to do. So I'm just going to wiggle it back to loop mode there. And now we'll have a panning delay. In order to save that, you press the foot switch. And I'll go ahead and remove this. I'm only going in through one input to demonstrate what kind of stereo image this device creates. And I'll go now back into the analog mode. And you're going to have to listen to this on stereo headphones or speakers, like stereo speakers with a good separation. But yeah, that would be a ping pong delay. They call it a panning delay. It has a nice subdivision between the two channels. If that's what you want, it sounds great. I'm probably going to use it in the wide stereo mode, which is the one you heard in the opening, but we'll go back to that. So, holding down the foot switch. Now it's in the settings mode, and we want to switch the switch over here all the way back to analog. And now we're in wide stereo again. Press the foot switch to save the settings. Unplug the cable. As you can hear there, you have a wide stereo image. It's not quite ping pong. It's just nice. It's lovely. It's like I stated, it's a really good alternative to a reverb to add space. Now, the default mode that I believe that this unit is in is the standard mode, which is just a standard stereo delay. So anything going into it won't be converted to stereo, except for the modulation and the reverb are both stereo on this by default. I'll demonstrate that really quick. So let's do that. So holding the foot switch, moving this over. And to go back to standard, it's pretty easy. It's actually standard. So loop, and then it's analog, and then standard, and then press to save. Gonna unplug this. If you noticed, we lost the stereo image. So I'm gonna go and show you. I'm gonna go to mod. Mod puts on a stereo modulation effect. And yeah, it's pretty nice. I really do still like that. Let me see. I believe it is the reverb. I'm checking the manual right now. I don't think it says anything about that, but yeah, let's just go to the reverb. It's mod, and then I believe it's reverb plus reverb. Oh no, that's Shimmer. Whoopsies. There's the reverb. I'm doing this at a really weird angle, so it's really hard for me to see. Yeah, so that's definitely stereo. So yeah, it adds that, still in the standard mode. I mean, if we go back, we're going to go back to analog here, but most of the delays are mono or stereo through in this case. So I'm going to go back into the wide stereo. So let's do that. Holding the foot switch again, plugging in a cable. It's orange. Switch it to analog. Press the button to save the settings. Unplug. And there we go. In the opening, I demonstrated that you can turn trails on and off. It's very simple. There's actually a switch in the back of it. It doesn't require any kind of interesting gymnastics in order to enable that mode, so that's pretty cool. I have the trails disabled for the rest of this demo, but no, it's pretty easy to turn on. It's quite pleasant and usable. I should note that they don't call it trails, they just call it carryover. So I'm just going to go back through all of the settings and give my opinions of it. In the opening, I didn't talk, so you could get your own opinions for it, but here I'm going to share my opinions of all the reverb types in wide stereo mode. So this time around, I'm going to use a plucked patch that I made called Plucked Fifth. And you can tell why I call it Pluck Fifth, because it has a fifth octave or a fifth up from the first oscillator. It sounds really nice. So that's in the analog mode. And it's not the best analog mode. It's not voiced very well. It doesn't have any noise artifacts like a standard analog delay will, but it is quite lovely. It doesn't really darken when you bring up the time and things like that. But yeah, it's still pretty good. So the next setting is the standard delay, and this is a very bright delay. Compared to like the DD-3, which has a it's still a bright delay, but it darkens up after each repeat session. This is much brighter. So that's just, it's nice. It really is. The next one is the tape setting. And the tape, again, it's nothing special, but it's voiced nicely. It does have some muted repeats on it, and it doesn't really emulate too much like wow and flutter or anything. It does have a slight bit of modulation on it, I've noticed. It's pretty nice. So the next mode is the warm mode, and some people were saying that this was modeled after the DD2 and DD3 in particular. It does sound very similar to those, but it's not quite there. I could definitely use it in place of a DD3 if I really needed to. In a mix, you probably won't be able to tell, but it's still lovely nonetheless. If you can hear there, the repeats are definitely not as bright. Definitely not as bright as the standard mode. So then the next mode is the reverse mode, and I love the reverse mode on this. There's a few cool things about it. So the cool thing that I want to bring up first is if you turn up the effect volume all the way. So when it's set about here, it gives you unity in terms of there's no gain or anything to the effect level. If you turn it up too much, then you actually get a louder effect than what you're putting into it, so louder repeats. But in the reverse mode, it totally kills dry. So let's turn that all the way up. So that's super useful. Still nice when you add a bit of the dry signal in with it as well, but yeah, that's super cool. So the next mode is called plus RV, and plus RV just means with reverb. It kind of sounds like a plate reverb, not exactly. I can't really place it. It's like the nondescript version of a reverb. It's generic reverb. Actually, listening to it a little deeper here, it does indeed sound like a plate. Yeah, kind of nice if you don't have a reverb pedal. It works in a pinch. It's not my favorite, but it isn't terrible either. So the next mode that we're in is going to be the Shimmer. And the Shimmer is actually not too bad on this. You can get a good shimmer out of the DD-500 if you really work at it, but just out of the box, this has a decent shimmer. We're going to use a pad. So I switched over to a pad. Let's listen to it dry. I mean, it's not the best shimmer in the world, but it's not also that bad. I've heard far worse. But yeah, it's usable. It's definitely not very responsive to very quick playing, like staccato or something like that. But for pads, it's absolutely fantastic. So the next setting we're going to go into is mod, and I really like Boss's modulation effects, especially their modulated delays. They're just really good at it. I mean, you go back in the history of Boss and some of their earliest effects, like the CE1 chorus, are just so good. And I mean, the CE2 is still personally one of my favorite choruses, next to the DC2, of course. But yeah, when they add modulation effects to something, they're great. I'm going to go back to my fifth pluck here. So. Yeah, that's nice. That again is also another one of the effects in here that are stereo without being in either panning or wide stereo mode. So really nice to add some space. So the last two modes are warp and glitch, and they require you to hold down the foot switch to do extra things. Let's go back into the glitch here. Or I think that's the warp mode, I'm sorry. So basically it's kind of like an infinite sustainer. I don't think it goes over Unity. I mean, I guess we could try. Nope, it just seems to hold the volume, so kind of cool. The glitch mode is kind of like the hold mode or the short loop mode on the DD3 and DD2, I believe. So. Not sure how I feel about that. I don't find that entirely useful, but it's cool, I guess. It's there. So you get it when you get the pedal. I mean, do what you will with it. The only mode I really didn't go over yet was the looper. The looper's just that. It's a looper. I mean, it's a looper. It's not very long. I think it's 20 seconds in stereo, 40 seconds in mono, but it's got one. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Again, I'm really surprised by the wide stereo mode in this pedal.